that he can just like.
I mean, we don't know that he can't. We don't know that he can't just build up a tolerance like anti-venom to cats.
I mean, he's gone this long without having vaccines, so you know.
That's true. That's true. So maybe he has built up a tolerance. But we are live here on the F Movie Podcast.
Heyo.
We're your hosts, Dylan and Price. I'm not going to be as bombastic. I'm at home. It's kind of a later shift, and I don't want to look like Price's child, or my wife's awake. I just don't want to scream.
My whole family's asleep.
Yeah, I only do that for the movie podcast. This is our off tangent one. If you haven't read by the title, we read all of One Piece,
all of it,
in a short burst of months. Really quick. Price, how long did it take you thinking about
it? We talked about it. What was it? October?
I think you started almost as I completed it. I was like probably in my last couple hundred chapters.
Yeah, when we went to that terrible Bowling Green anime con.
BGAC baby
was when I started. Do not recommend. Do not go.
The anime con or reading One Piece? Ooh, we'll save that for the end on that one. Do we recommend
maybe I spite read 1135 chapters.
It's possible, man. Listen, I've seen you spite go to Japan, so I don't rule out
twice.
Spite reading. I think it was just the first time. If you go the second time out of spite, get over it. You know, but
we got a problem.
Yeah. But you know what? We'll save some more thoughts on that. You'll get our thoughts about the whole manga because that's what this whole little bottle episode is. But yeah, I read it. I started reading it beginning of September, and I finished it like right around the beginning of November. So September.
Dang.
I crunched it in 3 months. So rough math was about 340 chapters or so a month.
Yeah.
Man. I don't want to think about that in weeks.
What made you start reading? Like, what gave you the impetus?
You know, it was something that
you finished Jujutsu Kaisen and was like, not going through this shit again.
Probably. I think it was like a bunch of culminating factors. I think it was JJK manga being done and being very underwhelmed with that. I think that it was like right after August, and I remember thinking and wanting to go back and check out One Piece. Had been on my mind for a while, but I feel like there've been a lot of like One Piece propaganda tossed at me recently, one way or the other.
Spoilers everywhere.
And then I found a video where somebody had read it all in one go and kind of gave it a review, and I was like, okay, I'm kind of intrigued. And then after I remember thinking like, I'm not like, I need something to like wind down at night. I think it was a game hole. I think I just beat Wukong and there was nothing else going on. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything else whenever like last couple hours before I go to bed. Why don't I just give it a try? I'll just read a few chapters. I'll see how far I get. If I just stop caring, I'll stop reading it. But if I keep caring, I'll keep reading. And then I just kept reading, man. So
Q4 2024 was a huge gaming hole, though. Yeah. So that was a great time for us to start.
It really was, and I'm pretty sure that's the main motivation for why I ended up doing it. Was just that like I got nothing else going on, and I was like, I'm already practiced up for the card game tournaments I was doing during the day, and I was like, I got nothing for like a couple hours a night, and I would just read because that's peaceful. It's good wind down. So.
Oh, yeah. Not during some arcs, though. There's no way that would be considered wind down for me. Like, that would keep me up.
Oh, no. Some where I was like, fuck, dude, it's 1:30. Go to bed. Like, yeah. It was rough.
Fishman arc, though. That would put you to sleep.
Snooze like a baby during Fishman arc. It was so easy to put down. But, oh, no, we're revealing some of the potential episodes of content on this one. But I talked with you about this, and I think, you know, I'm not going to take full credit for it, but I think I tipped the domino that said, go ahead and read it, buddy, because you did get back to it, and then you circled back and said, son of a bitch, I'm in. So.
Yeah, there was a friend of mine I played League with for like 6 years, been on trips, great guy, never suspected him to read manga, and he was like, yeah, like I'm thinking about getting one tattoo on my body, and that is One Piece. And I was like, wow, all right, I gotta give this a shot, see how it goes. And I guess I viewed it more as like homework rather than like something I would do for fun, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I didn't look at it as something like I was looking forward to doing. It was like, oh, I got to do 5 chapters tonight.
Right.
And the beginning of One Piece, like it's in my opinion, it's very rough. Yeah. And I just didn't vibe. I checked out after like 100 chapters and was like, I feel like I gave it a fair shot. Not going to get into it. And then about 3 years passed. And then we were at the anime con. You're like, yeah, I'm just reading One Piece. It's pretty fire. And I was like, oh. And that was it. You didn't say like, you got to read this.
Nope.
You got to do it now. You were just like, yeah, it's pretty good. And I was like, all right.
I was as surprised as anybody else. Listen, I'd put it off for 99 to 24, about 25 years. And so, and especially keeping up with all the other animes, this is kind of one of the like my old head failures, right? Like if you've been an old head anime fan where you grew up with the big three being Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, then I mean objectively you could push like Dragon Ball Z and other thing, Pokemon and all those ones as like original, but neither here nor there. With Dragon Piece with One Piece, Naruto and Bleach, those were the big three, and I kept up with Naruto and Bleach the entire way through, and I loved both of those. I was a start to finish watcher on those ones when those came out, when those were on manga. I was reading them all the way through. I just didn't commit to One Piece. So it did always feel weird that I just kind of left that one off. But I remember, like everybody else, it was like the art looks weird. This looks this looks that. We just kind of created excuses. But I mean, 25 years plus later, it just still keeps on going. So I was like, there has to be something here.
See, the art is what pulled me in the first place. Like I've loved the art ever since I have seen it. I just never got into the manga for some reason. Like I've loved the art. Like people, like you're right. A lot of people say like they don't like the art, and I've always loved it. And then when this is gonna be a full spoiler cast, by the way. You're on this channel, you know everything. Spoilers.
We spoil everything. If you're not up to date with chapters.
Yeah, we're not trying to pull new people in at this point, I guess. We're just spoiling it for everybody.
Sure.
But if you've been on the internet at all, you've seen One Piece spoilers about like Ace dying. And then the big one that got me was Gear 5. And all I saw was the design of Gear 5, and I was like, I want a figure of it. I want everything of this. I'm not going to read the story, but I love the design of this so much.
The design is super good. Yeah.
Oh, so good. And then once I finally got into it and got to Wano, when you see Gear 5 and it's like Looney Tunes, I was like, oh my God, I love this so much. But
the animation team went hard on turning that into the show, and it really translated super good.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I watched the fight before I read the manga, so I was like, I don't know what's happening. And then I was watching the fight, and it's like Looney Tunes sound effects and stuff, and I'm like, what is happening? I don't know if I like this anymore. And now that, of course, I know the context, I'm like, I'm on board. Everything about it, love it.
It's such a wild ride on that one, but I think that ties in really well to the first question. I'll kind of queue up on this one, and I meant to do this here. Here's what we do. Okay, you just get to hear the lovely sound. What moment hooked you?
Ooh, that's nice. That's nice. That's production. That's top tier production that you 69 subscribers pay for.
That's right. Which is so funny that we do it on the off content, right? This is the barely on the show. But Price, I'll go ahead and start because I asked you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Notice on the dime with that one, but mine actually happens really quickly. So whenever I was reading through East Blue arc, aka the first 100-something chapters, pretty much the introductory arc to the whole show, or manga, if you will. The moment where I remember thinking like, "Fuck yeah," and like it was my very first like, "Yeah, let's go," like was right when, so it's whenever they're at home with Nami, and super early on, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, big shark dude. This is what happens when you read it all in 3 minutes. Arlong. So when Arlong terrorizes the whole town and does all that, and they have Nami flashback, and it shows like them killing her adoptive mom.
Totally unexpected to this point,
dude. Totally. Very dark, very tone heavy switch on it, which is like One Piece can do it, but it mostly stays pretty lighthearted. And it was just super heavy. And then there's this huge Nami defeat moment, and she finally just breaks down, and she's just sitting there cries, and she's just like, "Oh, Luffy, help!" And then you see
such a good pick.
Hat shot, fade out, puts it on her head. He's like, "All right, let's go." And then,
which is exactly what Shanks did for him.
Yes,
peak.
full poetic circle on that one. And I mean, it's hard to not say that that's the movie that like really says I'm hanging with the whole show from that point forward. But I really do think it is like.
Because at that
That
point, like to that point, you think like it's like a goofy, like whimsical kind of adventure that
yeah.
Luffy's like, oh, he likes to eat a lot. He's kind of
Mhm.
wacky. And you're like, oh, he can get like he's not as goofy and like he's not as dumb as
Yes.
they want you to think.
Right. I mean, he definitely fits into that like shonen character of the time aspect. Like, if there's a
Hmm.
spectrum of Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, like as just like like Ichigo, Luffy, Naruto, like he's in the Naruto side of the spectrum of dumb but like surprisingly competent. Whereas like we get Ichigo who's surprisingly competent but less dumb. You know, I feel like it's like a varying amount of either one of those. And Luffy gets those moments, but I think we're this is the first I feel like this is the first genuine moment where he's like, I'm mad for a friend and I'm here to show up and I'm here to like I'm about to wreck shit. And then he just goes on and wrecks shit. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh wow, it's the first time I felt like I was taking the manga really seriously because they had a really serious like character moment, and then that all pans to that. And I was just so emotionally invested on like, I want to see them fucking take on the world after this.
Which is so funny that like that trait is a very signature thing of Luffy's that goes all the way
Mhm.
to the point, which I think is hilarious. That in Wano, is it Wano or Wano?
I think it's Wano, but
Wano, that sounds better. In Wano, Kaido's like, "Why are you even here? Like, why
Mhm.
are you so like into this?" And he was like, "Some random girl fed me."
Yeah.
Okay,
It doesn't
you're
take much to be Luffy's friend, but if you are Luffy's friend, it's so ride or die. Like
it's
he
like
was
he's fighting the strongest person, like almost the strongest person in the world because
right.
somebody fed him one time, a little girl
Yeah.
in the village.
I will overthrow this country, little girl. I can't believe you do not eat well here. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
insane. No, that's a super good pick. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but
yeah. That's
mine actually wasn't that. It was actually further forward because when I first read the manga, I read that part and it didn't
mhm,
hook me. Again, I don't know why, but that's a super great pick. The one that actually got me, which is actually on the opposite side of this emotional spectrum,
hmm,
was in the Alabasta arc when
okay.
Luffy loses for the first time against Hook guy,
Crocodile. Yeah,
Crocodile.
yeah.
He loses against him the first time, and I was like, okay, all right. I know he's going to win eventually, but okay, doing
He
something a
gets
little different.
he
I
gets
like that.
handled that first time too. It's free. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
which he should because
yeah,
like it's a Warlord of the Sea, and like you've seen the other ones.
yeah.
Like Coma is ridiculously stronger than them.
Just punches people to different continents. So
Yeah. So he gets handled by a crocodile, and then the way he comes back to fight him is what hooked me. When he just like sucks up water and is like, "You're sand, so I'm gonna fill myself up with water like SpongeBob
yeah,
to fight you." And then that was when my stupid ass. I was like, "All right, I'm in."
yeah. You're this doesn't remotely surprise me. Like the idea of him spitting up a giant ball of water for him to fall back onto him after he gets the suck on that one, and you being like, this is like that SpongeBob episode where he's got the suds.
That's
Like,
that's exactly why I was hooked on it. I was like, okay, this is doing something because you do have the serious moments, which is
yeah,
way more rare than the goofy moments.
for sure.
But the goofy moments, like it just really hits. I mean, my favorite moments are those small moments you get of the crew between arcs when they're just on the ship.
Mhm.
Like one of my favorites is when they just get the Thousand Sunny, so the upgrade,
Yeah.
and Frankie's like, "Oh, we even have an aquarium in here. You can put fish in." So I think it's Luffy and Usopp because it's usually those two.
Mhm.
Put a bunch of fish in there, and then they go out and go on this big adventure to get this shark, this huge shark,
Yeah.
and then they put it in there, and all the fish are gone. They're like, "What happened?" And then like Nami yells at them,
She's like, you
like
put a
the
gigantic shark in
like
there.
the shark ate them all, and the shark just has like a fork and like a bib on.
Uh-huh. I I will
Sent
say
me.
that is definitely one of the better charms on One Piece is that like when it leans into its goofy, it's so in. Like it
And
does
it's so
not.
good every time. The
Yeah.
comedy always hits.
Yeah.
Always.
I'm I won't say that for me, I won't say that the comedy always hits because there's one ongoing
Are you talking about
example.
Sanji?
I'm talking about Sanji.
I think that's just a given. Like
Yeah,
that is
but
such a given. When
so fun fact,
he gets out of his time skip, oh my god.
it's his
I
best moment
was
for a little while.
No,
And
it's his
then
worst moment. It's his worst moment.
post time skip whenever it's the blood nose thing. I'm thinking of
Yeah, when he actually like is like because that leads into Fishman arc
yeah, yeah.
when he's like he sees mermaids and he actually like
He
goes
loses enough
comatose from
blood to
blood
be like
loss and I'm like
yeah.
I can't. I can't.
I will see. This is okay. This is part of the charm of One Piece because I'll say, even though like reading it, I was like, this fucking guy, I can't. But talking about it, I will. It's kind of like it's Tim and Eric's $1 billion movie all over again, where it's like
Nope.
talking about it.
It's
I'm
just
like,
bad.
there's a
It's just
charm to
bad.
it. But we're quite a bit of ways off script. We'll keep talking a little bit more, but we'll transition over to the next one, and I will fix the banner here. Let me go ahead.
Come on, top tier production. Our
Okay.
69 subscribers are expecting.
One sec.
I'm not going to do anything to entertain them while you're doing this. I'm sorry. I don't have anything. Look in the background. You'll find something.
Top 2 arcs.
Okay. You want to lead or me?
I will let you lead, but before that, let me go ahead and no, let's go this screen. And we get a tier listing right here. Nice and easy for us. So
okay.
This is a barely legible my tier, and then this is a slightly more legible your tier. I probably should went with a better
You're
color.
crushing it.
Yeah. Top tier production here on the FN podcast, as always.
Hell yeah.
But quick note to viewers. Me and Price very unanimously agreed that Marineford is obviously number 1. So
obviously
it wasn't even worth putting on number 1. So the next 2 after Marineford are going to be where we land on this one. But Price, here, you'll do one, I'll go one, and then you do one, and then I'll do.
Well, I want to say a brief word about why Marineford, in my opinion and your opinion, is the top arc, which, I mean, it's just a culmination of like everything that One Piece has been going for up to this moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 30 chapters of full spreads almost the whole time. And every one of those full spreads, almost every character besides the Straw Hat crew, like it's every character you've ever seen, like fighting in the background, like everyone's included.
Yeah.
And I mean, the moment where like my earth was shattered was when Whitebeard showed up and everybody's like, what is going on? Like, he's the best. And I'm like, I haven't seen him do anything yet.
Yes.
And then he goes, wham. And then it does that full spread of the sea, like sinking into the abyss.
Yeah, sinking in. Like, and then there's just a huge tidal wave reverberation back that brings Luffy and the whole crew in. Yeah.
Like every chapter, there's something just monumental happening. Every chapter, something huge is going on. Like, you think that you were shocked when you saw what the Tremor Fruit did? Well, Blackbeard comes in at the very last second and just steals it from him. Didn't know you could steal it from him, but now he has 2 of the most OP powers we have seen to this point.
Right.
I mean, and just the story, like the dramatic moment when Ace actually dies and then he stays dead is crazy. Like,
they don't res him, they don't do that. It's just the whole rest of like the whole next arc, like the next little chunk of arc for Luffy is him processing and grieving and flashbacking. And then saying, all right, how do I get stronger now? Because this is the world I have to fight in. And it just narratively, it just serves everything afterwards. It really is the defining end of an era and the beginning of a new era in a way that you feel it by the time we're coming back to Shabati again. And everybody has that time skip and jump on that one. It really is. I mean, and I described it to Price off screen. But to the Naruto viewers, it really is the difference between hopping from Naruto to Naruto Shippuden when there's a time leap. And now we're in a new era in the same way that this is exactly One Piece's whole thing. And if anything, I think One Piece did it notably better. I think to sign off on sewing off the old era ending with like the literal like peak of pirates with Greybeard going, and then curving that into like just what feels like the big. I mean, the rest of the series is Luffy's run up to be like where he is now in the story. I think is such a good setup. Like, it's solid. Plus the arcs leading into Marineford, including Marineford, are crazy good. But
yeah,
it's the best stretch of. It was the easiest stretch of reading the manga, hands down, because it was just like bangers after bangers for like hundreds of chapters.
Yep.
I cannot imagine reading that on a weekly basis. Like, dude, you're just eating so good for like what, probably 2 or 3 years straight of like chapters.
I can't imagine like just getting to just enjoy and chew and like enjoy with the community for that long of just like, is this like the best thing that's happening right now?
I mean, it probably was, man. And this is, and like, I'm trying to like, I really wish I could have seen like, I could probably look up the dates when that was released, or those arcs were kind of getting released from like what time period. But I'm like, man, the world must have just felt so pure during that time to like whoever was reading during those years. But without further ado, so Marineford we'll casually put over here. Don't mind that. That's the number one spot, uncontended, and then we've got a whole bunch of other ones here.
All right, so my number two, I have to preface with two honorable mentions,
Sure.
which is it's going to go quickly, so this doesn't take forever. One is actually Egghead.
I
I
respect it.
love the Egghead arc so much. It like just got finished. Again, we're on chapter 1135, so we're discussing
Mhm.
to that point. And just the amount, like to me, it seems like the most world building we've gotten in One Piece through the entire story, even over Marineford, in my opinion. Like you learn so much about the world, but can't go into it too much. But
Yeah.
Egghead was amazing.
Mhm.
My third that I really was fighting with number two with, that you're going to be really shocked, was actually Impel Down. I, it
Mhm.
just didn't make the top two for me, but I'm not going to say why until we possibly talk about it later because I don't
Okay.
want to take the whole time.
Sure.
Number two, actually, that competed with Impel Down is actually the Dressrosa arc. Um,
Ooh,
I
okay.
was really surprised how much I enjoyed that. Like Doflamingo is close to my favorite villain
He's good.
because I just love how he's just evil. Like there's not really a justification. He's just super evil, and he's like, I'm just gonna kill everybody and do whatever I want.
Mhm.
And he has such a cool power with like the threads that can go anywhere. Loved him, and I loved all the gladiator, like small gladiator arc where Luffy is dressed as Lucy and goes through and like
Yeah.
tames a boar while he's in the arena and
Yeah.
like saves a bunch of people who become very important. Bartholomew, Captain Bartholomew, who's like the biggest straw hat simp, I
Mhm.
think is hilarious.
That as a whole concept, is really, really good. Like, it's just like, because it kind of makes sense, right? Like, when you're at this notoriety level, like, you do become famous. And, like, I think One Piece does a really good job of hamming that up and showing power levels almost through bounties, but in another way of also just making you feel like they should be more well known, especially early on when, like, nobody knows who the fuck Luffy is. They don't give him any respect. And then how quickly that turns up, I'm just like, oh man, like, yeah. I
Yeah,
don't hate this. Dressrosa, I think, has some really, really solid moments. The
it is a bit long. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna like
yeah.
I'm not gonna fight for it and be like you're wrong for hating it,
Mm-mm.
because the guy I was talking about that got me into One Piece, he's like Dressrosa is my least favorite. Like, yeah, I kind of get it. I don't
I
I don't
I could
blame you,
see
but
the
it just
argument
hit
there.
for me.
Yeah, I mean, I could see an argument that it could be depending on who's reading it. They could say it's a better or worse Alabasta. I mean, because it is
Mm,
very
that's a
it,
really good point.
it is very similar in its structure, telling, and everything like that. There's a lot of beats that are very close to it. And in regards to original like plot, like what's going on in the arc, yeah, you can make the argument to say that both Alabasta and Dressrosa are probably the least original ideas. It's two dudes taking over a country, and Luffy's gonna stop them, which effectively sums it up. But that being said, it's just executed really well. I'm not gonna fault you for liking it
And
that
a fight that like I feel like is slept on a lot is the Zoro versus or Zolo versus the number two guy, the guy who's like can take over structures pretty much.
Oh yeah, the big rock guy.
Oh
Yeah.
my! I took so many screenshots of the full page spreads of that fight
Mhm.
because I just loved it so much. I thought it was so cool, that fight. I don't have any idea how Zolo could fight him, but loved it either way.
Yeah. Um, I will say my number two. On a quick preface, um, I'm just gonna randomly shill this one arc because I don't think it gets the love it deserves. And in hindsight, I really enjoy it. At the time, it was so. Long Ring, Long Land is really fun little burst for what it is. It's the little competition one where they do the pirate stealing competition. They're like, hey, we're gonna do
You're
this,
so right. You're
dude.
so right.
In high in hindsight, that is such a fun little burst of arcs. Like at the time, I was just like, get to the new shit. But in like after sitting with it, I'm like, dude, that is so fun. That was a fun little dumb series that I really enjoyed and really give you a little bit of like world building through the lore. But without any more padding on it, I'm gonna go ahead and say my number two. I
Oh,
guess
you're
that's
not gonna give it to Long Ring?
no, I won't give it to Long Ring, although I get tempted. That's probably it's up there. It'd be my top four. But if Marineford's number one, I'm gonna say that this would be my number three then, so that number two is
It
leaving for
was really fun. It's not
yeah.
like there's not a lot of meat to it, but it's so funny.
It's a
The afro,
it's a
the
quick
afro.
it's a quick little snack, but it's good. But I'm gonna give it to Skypiea.
Oh, you're cooked.
Dude.
You're cooked. You are
I
not cooking here.
I am here's my quick take on it. NL is sick.
He's one of my favorites. I
He
don't
is
see him talked about enough. I love him.
he is a criminally under talked about villain, and I get it. Like there's a lot of really good villains in One Piece, but I think NL for not necessarily being evil, but just being like, I'm God. This is how it goes, man. I don't know what to tell you. I just found that really really solid. I think that there's so many good moments in there, and it's a very very different setting. You know, we're used to uh, the many cultures and backgrounds that they give us in One Piece, but being up in the sky and being with the clouds and giving like that whole little sweat. I don't know. It was just like a fun adventure. I had a good time with this arc pretty consistently. And then they have like the whole what feels like the for the Naruto fans out there, the Chunin exams. They just go into the forest and have this huge like tournament fight off effectively, slowly but surely throughout. And by the time it's like Luffy and NL, I mean NL wipes the floor with every other character in this arc. He really is just like that guy.
And this is when the Oda really got a fan of using the crazy face whenever
Yes.
something crazy happens, because Ino like uses what superpower on Luffy, and
Uh-huh.
Luffy just sitting there like,
Luffy
what?
has that Saitama face, that like, okay, like that blank dumb face on him, and
And
dude,
that's when an L does that now infamous face. Where he's like,
yeah.
what?
And seeing the direction of how that all fight go, the fight between him and Luffy is like, it's okay, honestly. Like,
Dragging the gold that he
yeah,
attached to
the
his
gold
arm.
ball.
But it's funny you say that, because the whole reason we're going to do a section later called least favorite flashback, I'm going to go ahead and say mine, is the stupid flashback that takes place in Skypiea between the Discover guy and the warrior jungle man. Jesus Christ, it goes on like 10 chapters. I want to say 15 for purpose of dramatic effect, but
It does
it
tend
goes
to go on.
it
Yeah.
goes so long. I genuinely, this is the only time I did this in the manga. I skipped some of it. I just kept flipping. I was like, it's still going, still going. I get the point. It's still going.
Right.
I hated it. I hated it so much. It dragged the arc down tremendously for me.
That's fair. I wouldn't fault you for that one. It's definitely not the peak on that one. But number 2, so this would be second to Marineford only.
Second to Marineford only. One that I want to shout out is Whole Cake. I think is really good. It's another that I should have shouted out in my honorable mentions.
So long. Both the arcs around
long.
this time period are year plus long arcs. Like, yeah, I enjoyed it, but they, man, like just being on the tail end, I felt their length more than anything else.
Yeah, they were pretty long, but I don't really care, because my number 1 behind Marineford is actually going to be Wano. I thought Wano was so hype. I get the beginning of it drags heavily. It drags so hard. I would say the first half of it is way too much setup, way too much focus on the samurai, like going into all that. But I thought Kazuki Odin's flashback was really entertaining. I love seeing how strong he is for some reason. Like he could like fight Kaido pretty easily. Like he didn't take him down, but like could fight him.
Pretty busted. Yeah, like relative to the world, he's fucking like when he fights people, he's fighting on near even ground.
But man, Orochi is one of like the most hateable villains in the entire like span of One Piece.
Orochi's pretty hateable. Yeah,
he's just such like a sniveling, conniving little gross man. Yeah. And I hated him viscerally so much. And like you thought they killed him, and then he came back. You're like, what is happening? Then you thought they killed him, and he came back again, and then they actually put him down for good. But that all pales in comparison to the Kaido Big Mama versus Kid Law and Luffy fight. I mean,
when they separate, and then it's them actually beating Big Mom, and the whole, I mean, even before then, the whole like 4v1 on Kaido, and Kaido's like, bring it, like, and pretty effortlessly fights all of them. Like,
and you see just how truly tough he is, because he doesn't dodge everything. He's actually very selective about what he dodges. Like there's a huge moment where Zolo charges up like one of his ultimate attacks or whatever, and Big Mama goes like, you need to dodge this one, and he's like, fine. But he takes a lot of hits and still just comes back. absolutely swinging. And
Yeah.
I wish we would have got more on his backstory. I don't feel like we got a lot about him. Like, I know
Yeah.
that he was with the Rocks Pirates, with all the
Mhm.
other famous people, but you don't really get too much in the way of backstory, unlike Big Mama, who you get an amazing flashback about in the whole
Yeah.
cake arc, which I loved her story.
Yeah.
Which I wish we got more on Kaido, because his introduction is, I think I've messaged you about it. It was
Yeah.
like he's like trying to kill himself by
Mhm.
jumping out of the sky. Like,
He found his way
oh,
up to Skypiea for the record, and then drops himself off of Skypiea
while
into the
drunk.
yeah, while drunk and just says, didn't do it. And
And
then
like,
proceeds to fight Kid and them, and it just wipes out their whole like squad. Like,
yeah. And I mean, Wano just, I had such a fun time with it. I get if I was probably reading it week to week, probably wouldn't be my one of my favorites, because
yeah.
it does drag. And I think those like first 50 chapters would have really just soured me on it, to
And you
where
gotta
like
think
it's like,
that's like a
give me
whole
whatever.
year of reading in like
Hmm.
normal people time. Like,
Yeah. So, but the highs at the end are so high. Those fights are so cool. I love Queen. Queen was so much
Queen's cool.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's like this cyborg dinosaur that like loves to party and like dance all the
Queen's a
time.
cool character. I I got sick of his fights though. Like his fight went on forever when in God, I don't know. Like truly, he fights Sanji for
Sanji's the big one.
yeah, mostly Sanji for so long. And that's maybe my biggest grievances on Wano is that like I think Wano altogether is a great arc. I'm not like, but my quick gripes on it are good God, do some of those fights drag into infinity with that. Now some of the fights are fantastic. The highlight fights are all some of the best in the series.
And I
But
think I'm clouded by that, to be totally honest.
yeah, and that's fair. I mean, like it's
And
there's some
Yamato, which I didn't even talk about. Best
yeah.
girl in One Piece, thinks she's Kasuki Odin for some reason. Can actually, like, she fought Kaido one on one for a
For a
while.
while. I mean, it's Kaido's daughter, and she's proven, hey, I'm bloodline, man. We run deep.
I was
So,
so hoping that she would get to join the Straw Hats. Ugh.
but then decide
But we
not.
got Jinbei. Great.
Yeah, okay.
Jinbei.
Jinbei's peak, man. I don't know what you're
No,
talking
he's
about.
not. He is not peak.
Uh, he's a totally okay crew member. Uh,
He's strong, which,
yeah,
I
he is.
mean,
I mean, he keeps
that's
proving how strong he is consistently. Like, but less about Wano, more about what I think is the number two, at least in my experience, arc on this one. I won't lie, the ones I was back and forth between, I feel like there's one really easy answer and then one that's like surprising. I would say the one that was in the runner up category, but and eventually dropped was Rogue Town. Rogue Town is
what happened in Rogue Town.
well, it might have been like Rogue Town Jaya. Like it's probably more Jaya. It's whenever they end up on the island. No, it's Jaya. Sorry, my mistake. My mistake. Jaya is whenever they end up on that one island. They meet Blackbeard for the first time. Luffy gets his like face like kicked in, and then he's like, "No, we're not fighting them. Like we're not making this big whole scene there." And it just had a lot of real interesting stuff going on. If you go back and look at what chapters were like, what's going on in that time, you'll be like, "Oh, this was kind of interesting." It starts to tease. I think that's the one where we finally. That's where I think we might get introduced to Ace. Actually, it's like the tail end of that arc because he's saying that he's looking for Blackbeard and finds him shortly after.
Oh, okay, Bellamy's in that one, which
Yeah,
I
Bellamy.
love
That's
that.
the
Bellamy talked so much crap to everybody the whole time, and then
yeah,
finally Luffy literally one taps him.
right. But it's you know what it is? It's the Mad Dog rant.
Yes,
It's
and that
that,
always gets you.
and dude, it does. But Impel Down is so fucking fun.
It is.
It is so fun, and it's so good to bring us back to a lot of these like the start of what's like. Okay, we're gonna recap before we wrap things up on this era, and this is where we get like almost all of our. I think probably actually all of the villains that Luffy and everybody had toppled up until this point, and they're all just in Impel Down, and they all come together and all serve in Marineford. But this all happens while they're doing a bunch of hijinks and Impel Down, and it's also the beginning of seeing how fucking great Buggy
I
is.
knew you were gonna bring that up.
Dude, Buggy is so good in this. Like, and Buggy proceeds to be good for the remainder of the series, starting from this point forward. Like, I just think that there's just so much fun to be had there. The fights are all really cool. We get what
Mhm.
it really is the definition of like it's an adventure arc while also still being a training arc in disguise. And I think it does that really, really well. Like better than most. Because Luffy gets fights, gets ricked, gets a bunch of hormones injected into him from Frankenfurter, and that's a Rocky Horror Picture Show reference. If you don't know that one, go watch the movie and then go watch other movies and talk to it
I
on our
didn't.
channel. He didn't, but it also starts to explain Luffy's very resilient explanation to poison, at least slightly. Like he eats that one poisonous fish later, and he's like, "Oh, I think I'm just fine, man." And then he gets super sick. Like,
And you realize that Mr. Two is the actual Chad among Chads.
dude, Mr. Two, oh my god, what a fucking character, man.
So such a real one.
He may
Such a real
he
one.
may boomerang back in some later segments on this show, but we'll see.
Yeah,
But
totally
Impelled Down,
understandable.
yeah. I mean, if we're talking about like what training arc felt like not a training arc and felt super fun and exciting and really interesting to read, it's just Impelled Down all the way through.
I mean,
And
I'm positive I sent you. It's my favorite small panel from the show where Buggy and Luffy are running, and Buggy's like, "Good thing I have my world famous bomb move that everybody knows
bomb
about."
kill.
And Luffy's just
Yeah.
like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
It's just a small panel. Buggy just like,
Nobody knows about that, Buggy. Shut up. Like, because you don't often see Luffy being so dismissive to people, but knowing that this is an old villain of his that he doesn't even remotely respect. Like, if he's around Crocodile, he's like, "All right, Crocodile, don't you do this." Buggy could be doing anything, and he's like, "Go die, Buggy." Like,
yeah, because when at the end, I think it's at the end of, was it Wano when they announced the new emperors?
yes.
Like they're all talking about it, and Luffy's like,
Luffy's
"Does
like,
everyone know
"What?"
he's a joke?"
Yeah, he's like, he's not strong. Why is he the emperor?
That's been my favorite side story going forward. After that is
It's so
is
funny.
the guild
Yeah, the Cross
lobby.
Guild.
The
Yeah,
Cross Guild. That's it. And there was a moment just a little bit ago where Buggy's like, "And we're gonna go out and find the One Piece and be the strongest ever."
yeah,
And then Crocodile and Mihawk are like, "Sit down."
yeah. They're just continually ripping him to shreds in their secret meetings, but they can't do anything about it because he's the charisma behind them. So
Yeah, and he's just like, he's at least a shield for us if something happens. They're gonna be coming after him, not us.
yeah, we all agree that Fishman arc is the worst arc. Anyways, so
Not even gonna go through it.
we're not even gonna do it. We'll just tell you right now, Fishman arc is the Marine. It's the anti-Marine Ford of
You
the arc.
actually agree though that Fishman is the worst?
It's the worst. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't care about the villains. I didn't care about the stakes. The only thing good that you really got out of it is like you realize like the poneglyph weapons are a lot more important than you think, and you learn that Princess Shirahoshi is basically a weapon because she can command the Neptunians. It's like
Right.
that's cool, but to have everything else wrapped around it for like 100 chapters, kill me.
Mm-hmm. It's hard, and yeah, what's his face? Hardy Henny something. What the villain? The shark?
I genuinely don't remember.
Not Oolong. Or
Not Arlong, yeah, the other
not
guy.
Oolong. Yeah,
I don't
but
know.
the
There's
other
two of them. There was
he's
the
a
one
hero.
who loved Princess Shirahoshi, and then there was the other one that just hated everybody, pretty much. So, yeah, that's an easy pick. I did actually have a surprise one for my second one, which was I really didn't like the Zhao arc with the animal people.
With the furry. Yeah.
It just felt inconsequential. I didn't feel like anything really happened, anything was gained, anything was lost.
Yeah,
Like
it
they
feels
were
like
fine.
it's a whole arc of setup. Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't feel needed, in my opinion. It just made me feel like I didn't feel as nearly as strong about it as I did about Fishman, but it still just felt like more of a waste of time than anything.
Yeah, but Zhao is cool. I mean, like the giant living elephant moving through the ocean is pretty fucking sick. Like,
yeah, and Momonosuke can talk to it basically.
Yeah, and that gives them a little bit bigger insight on what's going on with him. But
which Momonosuke getting aged up and turned into a super dragon at Wano.
Yeah,
forgot about that.
Oh,
that was
more
awesome.
reasons to like Wano. Oh shit, here we go.
Now just another little side thing where Momonosuke was like, "Nami, I'm crying," and then he just go to her boobs.
Yeah, every
and then
time.
Sanji's like, "He's doing that on purpose."
Son of a bitch, he keeps doing it. Yeah, that's the funny thing is he can do that, and it's fun. When Sanji does it, it's just not as fun. But speaking of deplorable, awful, mean characters, we're gonna go for top villain, and we will go to screen one for this. Screen one. We've got a pretty hefty list here. I don't know if you noticed. There's a couple of villains in.
Oh
in
my god! That bottom left one, he's just like a random member of Blackbeard's crew, right? Down.
Yeah. Oh, this
Yeah.
is
So
the one
keep
that
going.
like Stellar
No.
Hoshi,
Keep going
right?
down. Down.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Way down.
Wait, yeah.
That guy with the penis on his face.
Oh yeah, this guy. Yeah, he's a throwaway character, but
Yeah.
he's got to be somebody. So you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I guess he's somebody's. Like they even put the gorillas on there from before Skypiea.
the gorillas are peak though, man. They
I
come. They come.
know.
Yeah. Top villain. Price. We'll start with you, and then I'll go on mine.
So recency bias. I almost wanted to pick Saint Saturn because I like love his like his little bit of backstory you get and just the over the top evilness that he has. Also wanted to possibly pick Big Mama because I think you get a lot of characterization out of her, and
we get Big Mama for a long time.
I wasn't expecting to get as much of her, but she got kind of tired after a moment. Like I got really tired of her. I got really tired of her chasing them when she was hungry after the cake. Like I feel like that lasted like 30 chapters of her just running after him. It's a tie between Orochi and Enel for me.
Ooh.
I'm gonna have to go Orochi. I still think he's my favorite, just from like how much I really hated him by the end of it. Like just everything he does to how he gets to power and like the means he uses to get there, by like faking getting the throne and everything. You have a hard time finding it.
I know. I was about to say I'll find them, but yeah,
it's gotta be down. It's the Wano.
I know, like the Wano characters were down here.
There's
but
Kaido, the Mirror Lady.
He has to be here before here. Then no, this is Sharko. This is Sharko. And then we got Dressrosa characters. And then how crazy would it be if they left out Orochi? Orochi is.
It looks like they have.
I know. I'm not.
I like that baby's on there.
Yeah.
He is amazing.
I think they did. I think they straight up left out Orochi. Man,
I don't think he's there.
All right, well, he was as a placeholder,
just because I just couldn't stand him, and I think that's what you want from a One Piece villain. Like sometimes you want a good story and like possibly sympathetic, but Orochi I think is just so detestable that when he finally gets his own, you're like, that's awesome.
Kaido's gonna be a placeholder because it's in his arc.
Fair enough.
Plus this is your top villain, and that could mean your favorite villain. That could be, why you like them, why you don't like them, and that could be a whole lot of reasons with that one. I will say I want to give an honorable mention to Buggy because for many reasons I really enjoy him, but I thought about it and I was like, I don't want to. It felt wrong to make him my villain answer.
I agree.
He's not. I don't like him for the reasons that I like villains. Like I like villains being kind of dark. I want them to be dark. I want them to be like almost evil. I want them to be sadistic. I want them to have some sort of charisma or charm or make me think about things a little bit differently. And strangely enough, mine's not a main villain of the arc. Mine is Dressrosa's secondary, but maybe the most important one, and that is, can you guess it? What's her name? Sugar. Yeah.
The one who turns people into toys.
Yeah. It's fucking twisted. It's the darkest part of Dressrosa by a bit. So here's the thing about Sugar. Sugar is a age-locked person who just continually eats sugar, which vibes, mood. But the thing about it is that Sugar uses her power knowing full well what she's doing. She turns people into toy slaves, and then when they get turned into toys, the concept and memories of them disappear from their life.
Everybody forgets.
They get erased from existence. That is horrific. That is an absurd power. Even amongst all of One Piece powers, I think it's objectively maybe like it's a top power in there. Like it's reality warping in a lot of ways is what it is. And it turns people into slaves with toys, and they retain a certain amount of power. Just all of Dressrosa is like, while yes, it is very much under the whole Pirate League, this is the tool of which they do it. And Candy does it really quite gleefully. Like they have no moral issues or qualms about it whatsoever when they're fighting it. They're like, cool, into a toy. This is what you do now. And I don't know, something about the complacency and just the pure cold-hearted nature about the ability and using it that way. I remember thinking like, I was like, ugh. Like that's the part in Dressrosa where I was like, that's horrific. Holy shit. That's like super fucked. Like, yeah, sure, we're like about to kill people with a whole like yarn cage, whatever. But you tortured these people. You took their loved ones and turned them into toys, and they watched them move on with their lives. I was just like, God bless. I don't know.
That's an interesting choice. Was
It
was
is.
not expecting that.
But it lingered with me more than any other villain. Like as I was reading through and I was like looking through even just this list, I was just like, yeah, we got some very like villains that are charismatic. There's some villains that I remember thinking like I cannot stand, and in ways that are like appropriate and in ways that aren't. Um, like we have these ones who kind of come through. You have characters like runner up. I would say that what feels like a probably very right answer is Blackbeard. You talk about character villains who are
Yeah.
detestable, deplorable, but charismatic kind of while doing it, while you're like, they leave an impact every time they come on. It probably really is Blackbeard. But Blackbeard, part of the charm, but also part of the like the consequence of that charm is that he's like such a silly little bitch. Like he's very dangerous and competent, especially in the later end of the arcs. But early on, he's just around all these other people, and he's just like, I'm not there yet. Come on, boys. And then he skedaddles. Like whenever Shanks pops up, he's like, I could do Graybeard after he died. I cannot do Shanks, and I know that. I'm out. Like he pieces out. And then when even Admiral Commander, lava guy, I'm forgetting his name.
Kanu?
Yes, Akainu shows up on. It's like one of the little in between arcs, right? And he's Blackbeard is terrorizing the island. They find Bonnie. They like beat her up, and they're just like, yeah. Anyways, this is Mallow Joint, and then Akainu shows up, and he's just like, "What the fuck you doing?" And he's like, "Oh boys, I'm out." And then he just pieces out. I don't know. It's so campy in a way that's like, fuck this guy. He's so deplorable, and I do love that about him. But
Yeah, and I like that he's just not over the top evil too. He's not like Doflamingo or something. He's not like killing babies for the sake of killing babies.
Yeah, but
he just kind of like does a backstab at the end, like a huge backstab on Whitebeard or something like that.
Which is truly pirate nature at its core. And in a lot of ways, I feel like I think the series is not shy about it. He feels like the definitive villain outside of like the Marines. But Sugar, dude, I don't know. That girl terrorized. That scared the shit out of me. That was the scariest thing I've read in One Piece. Fair pick. I like that it's Sugar and then Kaido, even though I know it's not Kaido, but it is a funny little like, here's the power scales on this one.
You always have such wacky picks for some things. You just have sometimes have a meme pick.
This is a wacky property, so I think that's to be expected on this one. I feel like this next segment will go pretty quick, but let me go ahead and everybody can hear that wonderful mechanical keyboard there.
You have such a loud keyboard for some reason.
Yeah, it's a typewriter keyboard that's mechanical.
Oh God.
This one's gonna be pretty fast. Favorite crew member. Not a whole lot to this, but I mean maybe. I don't know. We could have whole discussions over this. Here's the crew. Main crew.
There's only one correct answer.
Let's get our boy right there.
I don't count him as a crew member. He's the captain.
He's the captain. What do you mean? Yeah, that's fair. You're right. Jinbei for Price.
He's possibly the worst behind Usopp for me.
Whoa, get out.
Usopp is so annoying. When Usopp was like, we're not getting rid of the ship. We're doing this. It's like, get over yourself. Stay here, you useless piece of garbage.
Water 7 Usopp is hard to read, but
yeah. Couldn't stand him.
So who's your favorite crew member though? We don't count
I wanted to possibly say Zolo, like not just because he's a badass. I think he's really funny. Like the fact that he's so stupid and doesn't realize it, and his dynamic with Sanji, I know it's very tired, but I think it's hilarious. Yeah. And now at the point they just meme the fact that like Zolo's like, I'm gonna go alone, and they're like, no, you're gonna get lost.
You're gonna get lost, you idiot. Right. The amount of people who are shipping Zolo and Sanji too is wildly high in the community is what I found out.
No. No, don't say it all. But my actual favorite crew member, surprisingly, is gonna be Brooks.
I fucking knew it was gonna be him.
I just love how stupid this guy is. Every time he makes an undead joke where he's like, "Oh, that made my heart stop. If I had one." He does that a million times, and it gets me every single time he makes that joke. And even like the other One Piece guy, he was like, I hate Brooks because he always does that panties thing. I'm like, I think it's kind of funny because he's not serious about it. He's just like
I was about to say,
I did this for you. Can I see your panties?
Like, corporate wants you to spot the difference between these two characters.
Sanji is an actual sex addict, and Brooks is just kind of like memeing. I just think he's a big meme. I think he's hilarious. The fact that he's like a rock star in the 2-year period. He's like, the way I train is becoming a world famous rock star.
Right. And then he does become kind of stronger somewhere in between all that, but it's very clearly implied that he spent the whole time becoming famous as
Yeah,
an artist, right?
yeah, super
Uh,
enjoy him.
Brooks is great, and he has a good end to. He has the best part of Thriller Bark Down is whenever he has his flashback, and you see that going back to the whale.
Oh,
That
the song, and that he's like the
yeah,
only one left, and they just want him to play the song while
yeah,
they're all dying.
it's a pretty great backdrop story. Like it's pretty
Yeah.
solid. Um, that being said, the runner up is your boy Zolo. Um, and for all the reasons you've listed, it's great. I will say, I think the thing that really puts me over on him is that he is consistently an excellent vice captain. Like
Mhm. That's a good point.
the amount of times he keeps Luffy in line, like, and genuinely it was just like, do not. No, Usopp said that he like during that same exact arc, Usopp leaves, and then Luffy's like contemplating, and then Sanji's or Zolo's like, no, you cannot do that. You're a captain. That is your rule. He left. You cannot like back down and just do that shit. And it's the little moments and stuff where he's serious, but he's the lore narrator for like how you should be a pirate sometimes when Luffy's like going a little too into his own selfishness. Like most of the time he lets him do it because he's captain. But there are some times when he's like, no, you can't do that. Like, bro, like get real. And
And he's a real one too. Like
yeah.
Luffy, like in the very beginning, found him like Luffy was basically riding a raft and found Zolo tied up and was like, "You want to join my crew?" And he's like,
Sure.
"All right."
Yeah.
Luffy had nobody. He had no ship. He hadn't shown any skills or anything, and so I was just like, "I see it."
Yeah. But he's like, you know what? You got a charm and charisma and you saved my life. I'm here for it. Yeah. No, he is a ride or die homie. But
I'm glad he never got one of those like Sanji or Usopp moments where they're like, well, I'm actually going to leave the crew for a bit or something like that.
yeah,
I'm glad that
they,
he never got that.
they never had to force it. Yeah. Um, but I won't lie. Surprisingly, despite not being my favorite waifu, she is my favorite crew member. Is Nami? Yeah. And here's a little bit why, and here's like why, and probably why
Booba.
not.
Booba.
Booba is good. But I think that maybe why Nami is probably my favorite throughout is her character trope and stuff like that keeps coming up enough even now where it's still a little charming, right? She starts off as just like this backstabbing thief, effectively, right? She will say and do anything to manipulate and get her way, and then she's going to steal all your shit. And she does that for like the first couple hundred chapters. And then every time that there's a chance to get in treasure, you're reminded, oh shit, they're pirates. And you know who reminds you that the treasure is important? Fucking Nami. You know, in a lot of ways, she serves as this other linchpin of reminding you that you're on a pirate quest and that this is a pirate ship. And it helps reinforce she's the gateway to being this showing the selfless nature that these guys are pirates. Because I think some of One Piece's best moments are, even though that they are huge heroes in these arcs, there's always like a moment towards the end usually where they've wrangled and been like, shit, get the treasure and go. At the end of Skypiea, they save the whole world, and then at the end they're taking as much fucking loot as they can, and it just reminds you like we are not trying to be heroes, we are accidental heroes, but we are pirates. And as much as Luffy gets to be the one to say it, I feel like Nami's the one who's always doing it. And I think that as like a through line character has served her really, really well. And they haven't dropped her character so much away from what we've got. Now she's like more trustworthy with the group and stuff like that. She's like very much the mom role. I mean, we got
very
her
strong.
Yeah. And her fights are always really super interesting. If I'm going to go into that point, she has some really, really fun fights, and her like kit and using the like weather wands and shit like that always ends up being really, really cool and interesting. Some of the coolest fights usually in the roster, where I think that she probably does better than Nico. Nico Robin starts out great, and then I feel like they just neutralized her. Like she's so, I mean, I feel like
She's so bland.
she is. She's very vanilla. Like they're like they didn't know how to write her as a good character, as a hero character now. So now she's just kind of like, this is fun. I'm enjoying my time. But Nami still feels like Nami. So across the board, I think Nami is like the character that keeps finding super interesting. And they loot her silly and all that stuff, and that part's really fun too. So she has most things I want in a character in One Piece. So
yeah, she always has to have a bath. Apparently, at the end of every arc, she's like, "I gotta
to
have."
be fair, I shower
bath
every
scene.
day, sometimes twice. So you know what, relatable. I get it.
It's just I know what I'm gonna get whenever she has. She's like, with the arcs ended, we gotta get a bath scene.
Yes.
I was talking about that with some friends, but I was like, I don't think I could ever recommend One Piece to my son because if I do, he's gonna think I'm some kind of pervert just because I'm like the
I mean, here,
amount of lewd stuff that's in there, like it's more normalized in Japan, but
right.
here, like I can never recommend it to him. I just wish that wasn't the case, but it is.
To be fair, if he ends up getting in the anime, that's going to be the least of his concerns. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I guess so.
but
Oh, you're getting the next thing ready.
I am. Probably another quicker segment along this one. We're getting pretty close. We've got one-ish more segments on this one, and we'll start to wrap out on One Piece Hour. But before we creep into that, we got favorite other captain. So this excludes Luffy. This is kind of going into the bigger cast on One Piece, and there's several good captains and decisions to be made here. And this left room for villains to not have to necessarily take the whole spot. This left room for a couple other things, so characters maybe didn't get enough love.
God, look at Shanks's neck.
I haven't really paid too much attention to some of these pictures. Where's Shanks on this one? I can't see him.
Bottom middle.
Oh god, dude, he is yoked. What is this picture? The anime, also, quick note on the anime. So apparently the anime hit some really good notes on expanding some characters, and they did, like, because they had a bunch of fillers, but apparently they actually used some really useful. Sanji comes out notably, I won't say notably different, but like they give him a good effort in trying to be a different character in the anime compared to the manga from what I was reading. I went back and watched a couple episodes, and I'm like, oh, they give him a lot to expand him. Manga, they don't. And he comes off as worse. So, fun fact.
I like the buggy captain picture.
Did the buggy one? Yeah. That's the, you know what? This is the energy you need for buggy, and that's spot on. But I'll go ahead and start with this one. I've given you first on this one. And I'll spoil it right away. It's my boy Bugs. Like,
that's a great pick.
Dude, yeah. I think in specific, this about Buggy was that where he wasn't my favorite villain, but then whenever we started thinking about, like, all right, who are the favorite captains? Because that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of good other captains on this run. And most of the captain characters get the most charisma in writing, but Buggy consistently is, after Impel Down on, is such a defining good captain for crossblades, for this, for the whole mercenary thing, and he keeps hilariously rising up. Like, he keeps falling upwards to an enormous extent. And it is the funniest thing in the world to me in One Piece. I've already kind of spoken about it throughout this episode, but I'm just going to wrap up and say Buggy is fucking peak, bro. That guy's so good.
He's a pretty great character. I wanted to almost say Whitebeard just because I feel like he has such an impact on the story, but honestly, I got kind of tired of his fatherly attribute that I think they hammered that in a bit too much, and I got really tired of being beat over the head that he sees his crew, his family, or whatever. I don't need Vin Diesel in my manga. I just got kind of tired of it.
But he crushed it, bro. Whatever. He's way better than them.
My actual favorite person, though, is somebody we talked about previously, though, and it's Bartholomew.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I think he's so hilarious whenever he's on. It's more of a meme pick, but like when I think of like captains that I really enjoy, he's not on there, I don't think.
Oh man, this is 2 for 2 on one's not on here.
Yeah,
man.
But they have the oily guy that follows.
I know he's gonna have to be Bartholomew because he does kind of have that. I don't know. I don't. It's funny that he's on here, but Bartholomew.
But I love Bartholomew. I think like he's got a really cool power. Like the barrier fruit is like really strong, and I love how he's introduced in Dressrosa, where like he pees on the ground.
Yeah,
and then you find out he's the biggest stan of the Straw Hats that's out there. He has merch made of them, and then just recently he came back after forever because he burned a Shanks flag because
he got humbled real quick with that. But...
and then Shanks is like, you give this poison to Luffy, and he's like, I'm a real one, not gonna happen, and drinks it, thinking that he's gonna die. So I was like, he's a real guy. And they're sailing away like they're gonna be okay, and then they blow his ship up anyway.
Yeah, you gotta. This goes back to Shanks's crew having their own Zolo. Like the vice captain's like, we can't let him do it, and he's like, yeah, and then he just blows up the ships, and Shanks like, anyways.
I know. I feel like Shanks is gonna be so important, but I still feel like I don't know much about him at all.
Yeah, I know. I mean, all they keep expressing is that he's more than meets the eye, and he's also ridiculously strong. Like,
he can like shoot hockey, which I didn't even know that you could do.
Yeah, the Conqueror Hakai or whatever it is. You could just, he's doing things with it that nobody even knew was possible, and he's just him. He really does feel like he's been secretly the main character of this show this whole time. Like,
yeah, super strong, but I'm still gonna go with my meme pick. I think he's got so much character and is so funny for what little writing time he gets.
I don't hate it. I think it's a solid pick on that. I think it's funny that both of the other captains that stick out to us aren't like the cool and awesome ones. It's just like the ones that consistently we find hilarious.
Like Law is so boring to me. Like he's got an okay power that I don't really understand, and then he's kind of a flat character. Like Law and
Yeah.
Kid, I feel like I should be much more engaged with, and I'm not.
I think that they're engaging enough for what they do, right? They go in to serve as like you want them as like foils of the same generation to Luffy, and they do a good job. And by the time they're fighting Big Mama, I think it like really all climaxes. And then I like what the series does right after is it immediately humbles both of their crews. It's like, okay, you want to be at Luffy's level and you're fighting and Luffy fights, but now you go out and like Blackbeard wipes them both off the like Blackboard and Shanks wipe them off the board. And it's just like you're not at that Emperor level yet. Like, and I kind of like that.
Yeah,
That
the
as a
the
message.
kid going after Shanks, thinking that
Yeah,
he's gonna do something, and then Shanks one taps him by himself.
yeah, immediately humbled. Like he's like, you are not in the same league. Like, make no mistake, Big Mama and Kaido are crazy strong. Yeah, and it took two of you to fight Big Mama. Shanks ain't gonna do that.
And
Shanks gonna
Blackbeard pretty much took out Law's entire group.
yeah, solos the whole crew. Like, yeah, I think narratively that's such a good like these are what these characters are meant for. Like that's the message they're supposed to be sending, and they'll probably come back in full circle. But I think they're good enough for that reason.
Another good captain before we get off is the mafia guy that has the wife and the little baby, and the baby is also smoking a cigar. He
All of
is
them are
so funny.
It's so funny that they're not in this list because
He
he
is at the top right.
is he. Oh, here he is. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
he's also great. He's so
no.
funny.
Wait. Oh, there's Bartholomew. Wait, that's
Oh,
him.
there we go.
Yeah,
Missed
there he
him.
is. No, yeah, this guy's fantastic. Boa honorary second. That's on that one.
It is. I'm getting kind of tired of how she sims for Luffy so much, but
You know what? Here's the thing. This is the total gender inequality. Sanji will do it for a girl the entire time. I'm sick of it. Boa does it for Luffy, and I'm like, she's a real one. I get it. You know what? Luffy, because here's the thing. Luffy's great, and I'm like, great choice in men. She's clearly the most beautiful character in the show, and she's just fun. Yeah,
you're wrong.
I agree to disagree, but the waifu segment is already settled by Boa versus Yamato. Yamato does throw more boobs out though, so I'll give her that. But
yeah, I forgot in the bath scene.
Yeah, the hot bath scene. She's just like, I'm a dude, bro. I go in here and bathe with the men. What do you mean? Price likes the trans character. Noted. All right, got it. No shame in it, man. I mean, just is
yeah.
what it
Why
is.
do they keep calling her Kaido's son?
Because she pretty much identifies as a guy. So, I mean, she identifies as Odin. So
yeah, she does say that she's Odin.
I'm a guy. I bathe in the guy hot tubs. So,
and Momonosuke's like, what?
Right.
You're not my dad. You're not my dad.
So confused by this whole thing. He's just like, I don't know, man. I'm an 8-year-old in a 28-year-old's body. I don't know what I'm doing here. So the last segments on this one, I need to queue it up, but I didn't have tier list makers on this one, so we'll go into
that would have to be hard.
Yeah, I'm sure, but we're going into flashbacks. We'll go Fate flashback to be specific. Price. I'll let you start up. Favorite flashback in the series.
Man, there are so many I wrote down.
I'm so curious if you end up on the same one as me for this thing.
If recency bias makes me want to pick it, but I can't. I don't know. Like just going through like the Big Mama's backstory, I like that. I don't know, for some reason I like that it kind of like humanized her in a way. Like it humanized her as much as it could, where like she wants to be loved, but she also is causing all this destruction around her of her own volition. That she's the one doing it, but she still wants it at the same time. So you get that warped sense of family that has created her whole island pretty much, which I thought was interesting. Robin's backstory, for a character I don't like at all, is great. Pretty interesting backstory that you learn everything about the people who are researching the Void Century. I love her dynamic with the giant guy Saul, which we know because he just came back.
Right, current arc with it. She's just reunited with him, and that's great.
But like when he's saving her at the end, and it's just like, just remember how we always laugh for the rest of your life, is that Durashishi thing. And then at the very end of the arc, when she's finally running away, she's crying everywhere, and then she's doing the Durashishi thing. I was like, okay, You got me there.
It hits. It hits. Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna have to give it the number 2 spot. Doflamingo's backstory, like I said earlier,
It's good.
I
Yeah.
love it. It's short. It's only like 5 or 10 chapters, if that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even that long. And it's just that his family are celestial dragons, and his dad's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm throwing it away. And then they're like, Are you for real? It's
Mhm.
like when you all say, like, Are you passing? Are you
Yeah.
for real
Yes.
passing? And
But
he's
you're
like,
but you're passing though, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And he's like, Yeah, you're passing. And he's like,
Mhm.
Okay. And then like he's like, No, I want to go back. I want to go back. And then
Right.
pass. And then they won't let him come back. And then they're basically getting crucified
Literally getting crucified, like
by the ta-
outside
by the
on the
town. And
on the
Doflamingo's like,
house.
I hate everybody. If I
Mhm.
get out of this somehow, I'm killing all of you. And he
It's a
rides that.
it's a pretty vindicating, like, why you're a villain, right? You're like, I deserve, and he's like, first of all, I deserve the whole world. I'm on top, and the fact that my father fucked that up, fuck that. And then people hated me for it, so I'm gonna kill them all because they're mine anyways, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And it's
yeah.
interesting to see how his father's choice shaped both his brother and him by
Mhm.
that same decision. His brother's like, I get where dad's coming from. I want to be something
Mhm.
different. I want to be a good guy, and leads into Law's backstory.
Right,
But Doflamingo's like, we had it all. Why would you mess that up? We are better
right.
than all these people.
In
But not,
spite of all of that, too, Doflamingo never looks at his family as sacrificial either, despite the fact that he does look at, like, so much of the world as this, like,
yeah,
expendable,
fair.
it's his. Like, anytime it's his family, he always treats them with respect, and they're like, "Oh, yeah," every time we've ever made fun of what's his face for having a silly voice, like, he beat our ass, or, like, Doflamingo himself was just like, "You don't do that." Like, I
Yeah.
I think
Um,
it's just endearing enough to not make him so one-dimensional in that way, so,
but call it a recency bias. Call it my new heartstring pull as a parent. It's got to be the coma backstory.
yeah,
I mean, I haven't
the
read
whole
something
Bonnie
like,
background and that whole tie-in with seeing
yeah,
how, yeah,
yeah.
his
I guess it'll
whole,
tie into Bonnie's backstory a little bit, but more of the
it's more
comas.
his, but yeah, whenever they're doing the Reverie, I mean, technically the whole Reverie flashback is kind of grounded in his flashback as like a whole run. Like,
Yeah, where basically you've seen kind of like, so you basically see at the beginning, see coma as like just a living weapon.
mhm,
And then you're like, okay, he's apparently been cloned, and we haven't even seen the real Coma.
right.
Then you see Coma as a slave of the celestial dragons, just being rode by one of those dumbasses, being whipped, and like, I have him for the weekend. He's got like whips and stuff all over
Mhm,
him. You're like, man, he's got it rough. Then you find out he's a revolutionary as
mhm.
well, and you're like, what in the world?
This
And so
guy's
like,
been everywhere, right?
so for like 1100 chapters, you're like, I don't really know who this is, and he's so
Yeah,
important to the story because he's the one that sends the Straw Hats away from each other. He's a
yeah,
huge antagonist the whole time, and then you finally get his full backstory and just see all that he's been through his entire life from the very moment he's born. Like even like the first chapter of his backstory hooked me with like almost the first page where it has his
mhm,
parents and they're both like these bigger people and he's smaller and they're like just try to get through it. Just remember Nika is gonna come and do our dance with us and we'll get out of this one day, and they're just going through these horrible conditions,
right.
and just the whole time he's like, I'm just holding on to this idea that Nika is going to be here. And then he just turns into this priest that like heals people because he turns back, like his backstory also includes the trans guy with the big head
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they were like partners at one point. Like I forgot he existed,
yeah.
and they get away, and then he becomes like a priest that helps people. And then the way he like helps people is by taking their pain, absorbing it, and like taking
At
it.
the end of the day, he's just holding on to it, and it's just the little small things for like all the elderly. It's just like, yeah, I mean, just this little bit helps. So,
Yeah, and his soon to be wannabe wife pretty much is like, they don't see what you're doing, but I do. Stop doing this.
right.
And he's like, if I can help one person, and I know that like the savior complex is something we've seen a million times, but seeing his backstory and knowing what he's gone through in the present, it's like,
Mhm.
man, this guy has gone through it all. And then finally, when you get that cathartic moment when Coma comes back to the present and saves Bonnie, who you find out is actually a 9-year-old girl.
Got you guys. You guys have been gooning the Bonnie the whole time.
What the heck? Oda shows her basically naked at one point.
Get him, FBI. There you go. Yeah.
um, I don't know. I just loved
He
his
is
whole
12 in
backstory.
canon, for those also keeping
But I loved his backstory. I thought it was all very heart wrenching, and then to find out like how it also plays into Saint Saturn, and even the light guy, Kizaru,
Oh, because yeah, Kizaru, yeah, yeah,
Kizaru, like how he plays into it. Who even does the Nika dance with them at
yeah.
one point? I'm like, this guy has some humanity, and then like you think he has humanity, then later he kills Egghead, and you're like, okay, I guess he
Kizaru
doesn't.
Kizaru is probably like a runner-up in some of my favorite villains as well, because I think amongst the admirals, like we got the Frozen one, who's
At
all the
Koji,
admirals are pretty well done, right? But
I don't
Kizaru,
understand a Koji at all. He's
yeah,
with Blackbeard now, and I'm like,
you're like, how the fuck did he end up with Blackbeard? Like, how does this make sense? And he's just like, I don't know, man. I'm wandering. Like, you can tell he's just lost after being kicked out of the Marines. But I think Kizaru feels. First of all, he just has a really cool Jeff Goldblum design that I love. But
yeah, I love his design.
design's sick. But him and an Egghead, that whole arc where he's sitting there, and spoilers if you haven't kept up with Egg, but whenever he's killing all the characters and a couple in specific, he has that moment where he just gets humbled and kicked back to the ship, and he's sitting there and he's just like, "Yeah, I had to kill my fucking best friend, you piece of shit," and he has this like very
When
human
his
moment.
cat, when the fleet
Kind
admiral
of,
is yelling at him, like
yeah.
Kando's like, "What are you doing? Like, why aren't you doing this?"
He's like, "You sent me to do this mission. Do you not understand all that?" And then he's just like, "I'm sorry," and he's like, "Yeah, it's fine. Come back when you're ready." Yeah, like I think that's such a cool moment. Like in the Marines who consistently get painted bad, but anyways, we're off track. We're not talking about favorite on that ones, but Kuma the villain. All right, so here's one. Honestly, I was a little sure that you were actually going to end up on this one, and I'll be surprised if it like you don't immediately be like, "Oh, that was a good choice." But my favorite flashback in the whole series, and I thought really hard about it, and I'm like, "Is it really this?" And I'm like, "Dude, yeah, it absolutely is." Is Senor Pink's flashback because if people anybody who hasn't watched this would be like, "What the fuck?" And
Why he's dressed
anybody
up as a baby
and
because
anybody who has, you're like, I
yeah,
get it. I totally get it. Because this flashback chapter from Russian with Love, where it shows why he looks like this, but also is pulling so much like tail consistently. And
all the women love him,
all the
and he's
women
the
love him.
manliest man.
He is the man. And his fight with Frankie is like, it's so inconsequential until we get this flashback. But the way it wraps on this flashback, where you find out that he's a pirate and he's always been a pirate, but why he looks like this ridiculous big man child is because when he got while he was pirating, he married a woman named Russian, and they got together. They loved each other. He kept up that it was a secret from her that he's a pirate, and he works at a bank, is what he tells her. They have a kid, and he goes off on one of this pirate quests shortly after they have a kid, and the kid gets sick and dies, which is also super tragic.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and she's like, "What are you doing? Like, what do you really do? He's dead. Why aren't you here?" And he's like, I don't know what to say." And she's like, "Yeah, I called the bank. You don't work at the bank." She was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm a pirate." And she's like, "Oh my God." And she runs out so upset and distraught at everything. And then she ends up in a landslide or something. And then she's comatose. And I'm just thinking like, what a fucking roller coaster I just got taken on by Oda on this chapter. And he goes there and the doctor's explaining, "Oh yeah, she's comatose. I mean, it's just a matter of how long she'll last." And it was just so heavy. And then he's in this super dressed up suit. He's just all like very nice, very like tailored. And he's trying to find all his ways to make these like consolations to his like comatose wife. And then he's just like, "Oh look, I found a Gimlet's, the baby's bonnet." And she starts to smile a little bit. And then he's like, "Oh, it makes her smile." And then he starts dressing like this big man baby just because it makes her smile. That's because it's all for Russian. And dude, that melted me when I read that. And then to wrap it all out with him and Frankie's fight at the end, they fight it out. Frankie beats him, and he's just like, "Hey, you know what? At the next time we fight, over drinks, we won't fight. We'll have run drinks. Tell me about Russian." And it was so noir, wrapped up ending, but it made me otherwise care about a character and a fight that I could not have given a shit less about during the Dressrosa arc. Like,
I think what it does so well, because it's such a short kind of arc and he's such a minor character that it didn't really stick with me. But I think the thing it does the best is that it takes a character that you think is a meme, a total
yeah,
meme, and then in like 2 chapters, you're like, oh, I
flips on your
kind
head.
of get it.
Yeah, like Senor Pink really becomes like a real character in this like whole like, and it just takes that couple chapters, and I think that's some of the times when Oda really files on all cylinders is on his wildly big, diverse cast. But he can make characters just interesting enough by giving him a chapter or two that really hit it home. And yeah, so your Pink of all characters, if you said like, oh man, that's a memorable character to me, I was like, that could have been a regular meme character in the background of many meme characters. But that flashback just did it. What a flashback. So tragic, but also so manly. I'm like, yeah, I'd share a drink of Senor Pink, him and all the bitches.
So, and it's basically just a man off. God, that was so funny.
It's like pretty silly, but pretty dumb. Like, but that's Frankie's character, you know, like really watered down to a point where it's like, I like that it's like so dumb, but everybody's so on board with it because he keeps bringing out Gundams and shit, and that is hype. Like,
yeah, but like sometimes like those like non-fight fights are some of the most memorable. Like Jujutsu Kaisen spoilers here for just a second. So if you haven't read it, this isn't going to be for anybody anyway. But quick Jujutsu Kaisen spoiler. I mean, probably one of my favorite fights in that whole series is the comedy fight between Geto and the comedy guy. I forgot his name. Like it's just so out of nowhere and dumb and so impactful.
Right.
That it really like hit me out of nowhere, which makes me think of Senor Pink because I remember his fight and he was probably like fight number 6 on the Dressrosa like tier list.
8 maybe even.
Yeah, because I mean most arcs are structured the same way. There's the big bad that Luffy's gonna fight. There's the number 2 that Zolo's gonna fight. Then there's the number 3 that Sanji's gonna fight.
Yeah,
there's gonna be people underneath them for the others. Not always a guarantee.
Sometimes the ladies fight, sometimes they don't. Sometimes
and the ladies like always fight a lady.
Yeah.
It's never lady and man, it's a lady and lady like every time.
Right. We see you, Oda. Let a man hit our girl. So,
unless it's Big Mama and she's ugly, then anybody can hit her.
Big Mama fights everybody, and Big Mama usually wins. So. What a machine Big Mama is.
She was a lot more fun than I thought she was going to be. She was there too long. I would have rather have had it reversed. I would rather have had Kaido for longer than Big Mama because I feel like we got a little bit too much of Big Mama.
Yeah,
I wish the roles were reversed, but she was still fun either way.
Yeah, and Cake Island I think is a little bit more interesting than like I won't say Wano. I wouldn't say Wano as a whole, but like the chunks of Wano that Kaido was running over. Like when we talk about Skull Island and stuff like that, like that's where the emphasis would have been. But Cake Island is really fun. Like that's a fun backdrop.
Did you like the Sanji backstory with the Nazi Power Rangers?
I actually did like that. I think that one gave him a little bit more depth. I think when they give the spotlight to Sanji and they give him something to work with other than like the trope, I think Sanji could be an okay character. I think the Nazi background is kind of interesting. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Plus his sister is probably one of my favorite waifus. She's probably like number 2 on the list. She's pretty bad. So
yeah, it is cool that their country is basically a moving landmass of ships that are on snails that go everywhere. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty sick. Like in the world, you have a country that's mobile. It's pretty sick.
That is pretty sick.
Yeah. Do we want to wrap up? Do we have what least favorite flashback? Is that the one you want to do, or did you have one that came to mind?
I already said it earlier. The Skypiea Wild Man flashback.
Yeah. This is probably an unpopular take. I think my least favorite flashback ends up being it's Hurdy. That's what his name is in Shark Fishman Island. But Hurdy's flashback tying in with Jinbei's flashback. Jinbei and the crew and why Jinbei is the way that he is and stuff like that. It's cool for Jinbei, but it's focused on Hurdy. And Hurdy just kind of comes off as this huge piece of shit. And I don't feel anything more than what I've started with him. I think like it's a flashback that unintentionally gave Jinbei like more to work with, but gave our villain nothing else. Like I never feel like I get more expanded on him in depth in ways that every other villain in the series gets. I just kind of remind myself, I don't like you, and I don't like anything that you do, and I don't like anything that you think, and you're just kind of like this hateful piece of shit, and I'm so over it. Like
I feel like Robin has more of a character than Jinbei. I think Jinbei is so boring.
Robin gets neutered pretty soon after Alabasta. She gets her flashback shortly after that, and then she gets like the Enies lobby like saving moment, which is great, but it's about her. It's not really for her. And then after that, yeah, she's just kind of like, teehee, this is fun. Up until, up until recently when she reconnects with Saul. So I want to like neat. I want to write Robin more. I think Robin, like in theory, is a cool character. I think in execution, that like I don't know if Oda knows what to do with her anymore, because she comes off as very bland relative to every other character on this.
She makes me think like she's supposed to be the straight man of the crew
Yeah.
almost, where like everybody's kind of crazy, and she's just like, you guys.
But
That's
they
what
have, but
yeah.
a lot of times they have Nami doing that. Nami gets to
Yeah,
Nami
like
gets to
knock
play
it
both
off, you
sides.
knuckleheads.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I just think the worst thing I can probably say about One Piece as a whole, and this is kind of just like final thoughts, and this is probably fine. We'll make a final slot category as we wind out. Final thoughts. Oda's writing of women characters. Can we put out there that he does not? He knows how to write a good story about a character. I don't think he often knows how to carry them forward.
Who's worse, Oda with with women characters, or Jujutsu Kaisen? Forgot his name.
Dude,
I'm gonna have to say Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yuji does not care for women characters. He had to make Maki as manly as possible to consider her decent enough to write. Like,
that's such a good way to put it.
I mean, like Nobara, he's like, I don't know how to write her. Let's write her out, and then
let's just kill her until the last 3 chapters.
let's just kill her off effectively for the most of the series, and then even Yuki, like it was just like, we'll give her a fight.
She could have been so cool.
That's my point, right? She could have been so much more, and then he's just like, I don't want to do it. Like, yeah, I think that
at least his designs are different when it comes to women. Like, I feel like every woman in there is very distinct, whereas in One Piece, like it's very hit or miss if he's going to do a good design. Like Nami and Princess Vivi and Robin are basically the same.
Yeah, they're all like pretty busty women with various hair colors. If you said like the blue and pink hair characters all kind of looks pretty samey, I'd be like, yeah, that's probably right. I think that's like why Boa stands out. Boa only really kind of looks like Nico Robin a little bit, but Boa, I don't know.
Just like him. Boa just has her boobs out more.
She does, but also I think that she actually has more of a character. Once she has a trope, which, Oda, I will say, pro and con is that if Oda has something that he can always kind of come back to and he doesn't know how to write a character, I think that does serve him, although it can be a detriment at times. Cue Sanji. But yeah, is Boa kind of annoying whenever she thinks about, like, you can make the argument that she's fine. Some people find it annoying. I'm with her. I mean, like, I'm not going to stan. Like, I stan Luffy, but I'm not going to, like, marry him over that way. But I get the idea. I can see why that's frustrating. I get frustrated with it with Sanji and with Brooks. But I think with between Nico and all these other ones still, I mean, these are characters that we get the whole time. And we're talking about members of the crew that get fleshed out. Like, again, it's more about them rather than them. And this is why Nami sticks out as my favorite, because it's just the most surprising in a world full of like pretty neutral milk toast kind of like women characters. For the most part, the most fleshed out character that's a woman is Big Mama, and then behind that it's like a 2-tier drop, probably to Nami or something, right? Like,
yeah,
what's even close after that
in terms of women?
Right.
It's pretty far. Jewelry Bonnie gets quite a bit.
Bonnie at the end gets a big run up, actually. And then I guess you can make an argument for saying whatever the clone's name of Egghead.
Lilith or
Lilith, the one who's
Lilith is the evil one.
Oh no, Lilith is
the one. No, she's actually the evil one. Greed is the one that turns on them.
Yeah, Greed's the one who turns on them. Lilith is the one that like comes off as evil, but she's with the crew still. Yeah, Lilith. You can kind of make an argument that she's kind of wrote out, but that's only because it's extending off a man's like lore. He's kind of like a clone of her. So again, it's like there's exceptions to the rule. I think Nami is the only one that kind of keeps a consistent one, and she's just, I mean, relatively speaking, she's okay written.
That's. I'm kind of fine with that, because I don't feel like the story is a man's story either. I don't feel like it's a man's world. Like Jujutsu Kaisen very much feels
they tell you it's a man's world and they emphasize that, and then they don't do much to change it. Like,
yeah, but One Piece, it just feels like it's about the world. Like, it really feels like it's such a big story that it's not about. It's about Luffy, really. But Luffy is such like an asexual, like, I just want to adventure guy.
Yeah, he's so wildly disinterested. But there are times I remember thinking there's been some of my favorite things about reading that I think is like above and beyond like a great thing on reading it. The little author notes and the little like end of Q&A, chapter Q&A thing.
I got so tired of those.
I did. I would start skimming them a little bit more often, but I think it was really important because a couple times they mentioned they're like, is Luffy like remotely interested in anybody? And he's like, oh yeah. I mean, he's made points of saying that people are beauty and he sees beauty and attraction. He just isn't led by it in the same way a lot of characters in the show are. Which is why Boa stands out, as a perfect foil and waifu for him because she's so definitively that character, like in on the joke about it. That Luffy's just like, yeah, Boa's great. I'm not gonna marry her though. Just that I think as a foil relationship is really, really good until but Boa continues to show she's a real one from the beginning. She's been like,
I do like that there's like not any romance in One Piece,
yeah,
like at all. I really like that you're not dealing with any kind of like romance triangles, like anybody fawning after another.
yeah.
I really like that.
With it mostly being implied to like, I mean, it's there quietly, right? It's never taking up a whole bunch of spotlight and time there. Like when we talk about, what was just the thing I was just thinking about? Darn it. Oh, there's a crew member in Dressrosa with Flamingo on Don Flamingo. It's the busty one. It's the busty Spanish singing one that meets up with Sanji really early on. She's
yeah.
She has like she starts to
She's like
have
a princess.
yeah, she starts to have a fight with Doflamingo, and there's the implication that they're like, oh, like there's a one like random off comment that kind of implies that he's like, oh, I know you a little bit better than that or something like that. And then in the Q&A, Oda expands and he's just like, yeah, I mean, there's probably a good chance that they had a romantic relationship. If you want to look into it, they've been people who've been involved with each other for a very long time. And it's just like, it's little hints and moans that I think that they don't take the spotlight away from action or storytelling or anything like that. It's just that like, yeah, it happens. And don't worry about it. People hook up. Sometimes they make some kids. Sometimes they do this. Yeah, it's there. But other than Sanji and Brooks, it's like all the romances. It's not romance. It's lust, and the lust is almost 9 out of 10 times a joke.
Yeah, but it's like it's not like really talked about at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. It doesn't. I just like that takes away from the story a lot, and I'm glad that this story doesn't worry about it.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see how and when this fucking series ends. I don't know. I'm afraid Oda might die before it ends. Truly, like I think we might get R.R. Martin. Like,
is he that like unhealthy?
He's not in
because
bad
like
health.
George R. Martin like is one Cheeto away from hitting the bucket.
Yeah.
It seems like.
I don't think. I mean, yes and no. Mangaka artists' health are always being talked about. How often they're in poor health.
Yeah.
And Oda's been doing it for 25 plus years. So I would wager to say it probably isn't great, but he's doing something right to consistently have been doing it for as long as he has at the level he's been doing. I mean, again, there's an argument to say that some of the best One Piece is going on right now on the tail end of like the current stuff. So I hope it's not, but we hear young mangaka artists die all the time with it. I mean, Toriyama died in his late 50s or something. How old was Toriyama? Thinking about it. Toriyama age?
Dragon Ball ended a while ago, though, right?
It did. I mean, 60. Okay, he died at 68, which is super young, especially in Japan. They live old in Japan. But Dragon Ball's kind of always got something going on. It's one of those series that always has something new. Currently, they have Daima going on, but Toyotaro, who is like inherited Dragon Ball from him, and when he did Super, he's the one doing all the Dragon Ball stuff.
I don't have the nostalgia for Dragon Ball, so there's no shot of me ever getting into that.
Boy, do I. Can you focus back up, camera? Thank you.
I don't get the hype for that at all. I can't imagine being 31 like I am and trying to watch Dragon Ball.
Watching Dragon Ball would be hard. Watching Dragon Ball Z, fine. Watching Dragon Ball GT, oof. Super. I
don't know any of those.
Yeah, so I'll put it in timeline context really quick for you. Dragon Ball is like the kid Goku. It's like all the young adventures before all the powers start getting absurd. Dragon Ball Z is all the powers absurd. You know that enough. Everybody knows at least a little bit of Dragon Ball Z. Super Saiyan, all that.
I just like if we're giving Oda crap about drawing just women characters, I feel like every character in Dragon Ball Z looks the exact same.
Most characters are some variation of Goku to the degree. I'm not going to fault that. That's not why, strangely enough, that's not why Dragon Ball is great, but that's a whole different discussion. So,
yeah.
No, I mean, I'll give shit to Oda for not writing women characters particularly well. And most of his characters you start with a big bust and then you kind of figure it out. Even the 12-year-old characters, you turn into 20-something-year-old characters, but we don't talk about Bonnie, that jailbait trap. Nice try, Oda. Aside from that, here's my other quick critique. One Piece action choreography, not its strong suit.
It kind of has One Piece. It's more about leading up to that big finisher. Like the
Mhm.
fights aren't really like fights. They're more of
No,
just like
it's
using strong move. You use strong move. I use strong move. I
punch,
use
punch,
finisher
slash,
strong
slash,
move.
kick, kick. Yeah, it's not. Speaking why I think not like Nami's fights typically I find really really interesting is because they're creative and they actually have an interesting choreography to it. But then it was something I realized whenever I had a moment reading Zolo's fight with the Phoenix guy in Wano,
Hmm.
and I was just like, huh, this fight's kind of boring. Like the choreography is boring, but like the idea is cool. I think that's what's cool, right? Like One Piece does a really good job of building up a fight, but the fight itself is usually so as far as choreography goes. And then I was like, wait a minute, has Zoro's fight always just been? And then he ends up behind them with slash marks, and then they're done.
And
And
him
then
with and him doing the like crouch
yeah,
down
and then
thing.
I went back and
Always.
I re-glanced at it. I watched a couple of the anime episodes to see if they maybe made it cooler, and it really all is the same stuff. And I was just like, man, the sword fights in this are pretty boring, and Zoro is at the center of every sword fight on this.
Him
So
having a sword in his mouth is the dumbest
it's pretty
crap.
dumb. Yeah,
It's really dumb.
like it
What's it
makes me
gonna achieve?
right. It makes me simultaneously like want him and Dracula to have a fight, but then not because I'm just like I feel like I'm gonna be underwhelmed now that I'm paying attention to the choreography in this way. Like Luffy's is kind of interesting. Like he finds abstract ways to fight. Like Skypiea stands out as like, oh, this isn't just powers. I'm gonna take this huge gold ball and hit you in the face with it. You know, like
And use the momentum from it to knock you sky
yeah,
high.
yeah, it's stuff like that. Why Skypiea stuck out to me, and I think why like lingering after the fact, where I was a little bit more critical of the fight choreography and how it looks and the fight overall. But they do a great job of building up into it, and they have a good job on releasing forms and doing that, which is very why I reference Dragon Ball, which is it's very Dragon Ball Z in that way, where a lot of Dragon Ball Z fights are punch and kick and kick and teleport and beam, beam, beam. But then when they're putting their forms on and they go into this big moment, that's where they feel like very similar authors in a lot of ways, where Oda feels inspired is that, oh man, we're in this new form, but you get gassed every time you see it. And even just a punch in that new form and seeing the emphasis behind it just always just hits. Like it does not matter. It just always keeps on hitting. So
Yeah, that's what I come to One Piece for the world, like the
yeah.
world story, what's going on, and learning more about that and seeing what's going on and like the moments, like the big moments where like Luffy hits Gear 5,
Mhm.
Kaido's introduced, just like big moments like that. If I'm not coming to One Piece for the moment to moment like fights because I don't think that's ever been One Piece's strong suit is the
Right.
choreography between the fights. If I really want that, I'm gonna watch a real battle shonen. Like I'm gonna
Mhm.
read a more battle shonen like One Punch Man. Even Jujutsu Kaisen, I think it does really well on the moment to moment fights.
Yeah, they have great. I think like JJK is probably the antithesis of the action in that way. Is where I think not that they're bad at emphasizing some fights. You know, I think fights surprise you if you just said, "Here's the roster," and you're like, "Oh," but then you go into the fight and you're like, "Oh, that was sick!" Like Chozo versus Yuji on the first glance on that feels like a mid tier fight. Like that's a fight before like a real boss fight. But that's like one of the coolest fucking fights in the series. Like,
Yeah. And
and
even Chainsaw Man, I feel like kind of has like a One Piece effect where like I'm not there for the battle choreography either,
yeah,
even though I think Chainsaw Man has better fight choreography than One Piece, but
yeah, I'd
it's
give it
another
more.
where I come to for the world and what's going on and how it works rather than and those are the ones that stick with me. That's why Chainsaw Man is my favorite manga, which is right there.
Yeah. And I think that stands out a lot of maybe kind of talking about the emphasis on like maybe the generations after. I mean, when we look at like the current gen art, like the current generation of popular artists, they're almost always affiliated or apprentice from other main authors of the time. And it doesn't surprise me to see that like Oda is great, but here's if I was a younger artist thinking like he's great, but the fights are kind of so-so. I want to make the fights really stand out. I want them to look like I want them to feel like a John Wick movie on paper, And I think that's
If
not
that
surprising to see
if,
that.
if that's what you want, then the best current manga that's going on right now that gives you those amazing fights is Kagurabaki.
Oh, I've heard
It's
good things about
so good.
Kagurabaki.
There's only like 60, 70 chapters because it's like brand new.
Yeah,
It probably has my favorite art. Like it is a gorgeous. gorgeous manga. It's so good.
There's
The characters aren't like near as strong because it's only 70 chapters in,
yeah.
so the characters don't feel super strong, but the fights are absolutely incredible.
I mean, and that typically is how it tends to go, right? Some of the best fights happen before all the power ups and stuff gets out of hand because it kind of streamlines how a fight can go. But when you're fighting with a very limited scope of things, it makes it like a lot more easier to run. I mean, the thing you'll hear a lot about Naruto, for instance, right, is like a lot of people's best fights are in Naruto original before it goes to Shippuden, because that's before all the huge power ups and things like that. And then the tail end of Shippuden kind of brings it back. They have some really amazing fights, choreography wise and everything. But this all kind of goes back to the bigger picture of saying like it's not Oda's strength, but in spite of that, he still clearly is writing one of the best manga of all time. I think second to none is he a world builder in the scheme of things to a jarringly alarming degree, sometimes a detrimental degree. He does not let side characters not have a moment or a flashback or a thing. If he introduces a character, you're going to find out things about this character and you just hope that you like it. That can be a lot, but yeah, One Piece really is like the equivalent of a D&D campaign told over many times over in a really good way. Like when you think about the action mentally, it's cooler than what's actually happening. You're rolling dice and saying, well, my 20 hit, like, but you get it, mentally when you're thinking about these fights, it's a sick fucking battle. It's more about the stakes and the emphasis in your involvement.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I don't have anything to add, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it is creeping past your bedtime, Dad. So
it is.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go ahead and wind down. Where can they catch you at, Bryce?
They can catch me at my house, wherever that is. Which the last thing I have to say though is that I started One Piece around the time I went on paternity leave, which I got really lucky and had 2 months of paternity leave. Today is literally the last day of my paternity leave. I start my first day of work tomorrow, so I ended One Piece the last day of my paternity leave.
TMP, brother. Thoughts and prayers.
Yep.
You have to go back to real work.
Real work.
Yeah, I hate that for you.
Can't count babysitting my kid as work, unfortunately.
Nope, parenting is not a job you get paid for, turns out. So
I know. Weird. You actually pay a lot of money.
Yeah, right. So but no, if you like the content we're doing here at all times, guys, let us know. Did you like the anime review? I don't know. We got some other mangas I'm sure we could read and just give our quick thoughts on, holistic thoughts. You want to hear our thoughts on JJK? I can do another hour on that.
Oh my God. I could talk about that.
Yeah. This is just mostly for Big Chris, who I think would watch this whole thing if he's into One Piece. If he read One Piece, he would watch this. So Chris, if you want us to do a JJK episode, let us know in the comments below.
When are we going to start One Piece card game content?
We won't. I'm not doing 2 card games again. I had to get out of Final Fantasy. I don't want to do One Piece.
You're officially out?
Yeah, I've been out for about 7 months now. Yeah,
I didn't know it was official.
Yeah,
I remember you said that you were going out, but I didn't know it was like official.
I mean, how many times do you say that before you actually do it, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm officially out. I'm full in on Lorcana, so the Disney card game hovering over me 6 cents. That pile's gonna keep getting bigger. I'm not gonna have a stand over here anymore.
I know it is. There's at least a scene that you can engage with in Lorcana.
I mean, the local scene.
The
local scene's great. We've got set championships coming up literally here in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
So that's fun. Yeah, I get to travel all over the state and do all these little tournaments. Go down to Tennessee for a little bit. I might go up to like Louisville or Lexington and Cincinnati just to fuck around.
Don't have to fly to Chicago to do one single Final Fantasy tournament we used to.
To go play a tournament and get washed because you don't have anyone to play with. So then you go up there. It doesn't matter how you train, you just get washed because these people play with people all the time.
Where did we went? Omaha? We went to Omaha.
Omaha, Nebraska.
For a tournament one time.
Hell yeah, we did. And we met some, to be fair, we met some of my favorite people in the Final Fantasy scene, Deshaun and Z and that whole crowd, dude. They're the Minnesota boys.
Stayed at the worst hotel.
Oh, dude, you picked it. But Price, this is probably when I should have known that you've consistently been a terrible picker of B&Bs and hotels. And if you're ever like, I'll pick the place, I'm gonna be like, how about you don't? How about I pick it and you just pay your part of it, Price?
I can do it.
I don't want you to do that. It's so bad. It's like it is you. This is your directional challenge. Like this is Zolo's directional challenge is you're finding a place to stay. And even Kelly would back this, but she isn't going to be on the stream. So
she's not. She's very much asleep.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyways, guys, that's our off the movie content. If you tune in, well, I'll tell you, although you're not going to see it for probably a few months. The next movie we're about to be reviewing tomorrow, although the video won't come out right away, is VHS 85. Tiny spoiler, because this will be on the channel before that video ever hits.
They're not going to be seeing that review for 6 months.
They're not going to see it for like 6 months, but here's the thing. You're going to get my thoughts on it right now. Fucking sucked, bro. It was so bad. God damn, I hate that. But it did show TNA. It did give me some ass and boobs in it. So, you know what? It's probably going to end up at like a 6.5 by the time it's if you want to see more of our movie content, stick around, look around. There's plenty of that here on this channel. Otherwise, if you want some more of this offshoot content, a little bit of gaming, missed that, let us know. You like the anime talk? Let us know. Maybe
we can do more of that. We've seen a lot of anime, read a lot of manga.
Yeah, we have. We could do a whole season. We could do the first core review of Dan to Dan. That'd be a fun one. So,
oh, that would. Topical.
Yeah. So let us know what you guys think. Mostly you, Chris, because I think you're the one who would have listened to this from start to finish. So, anyways, that's our show. Until next time, guys. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Okay. Here's my favorite thing. StreamYard takes so